As the fight over whether to start impeachment proceedings plays out in Washington, a different fight is playing out across the country. A fight for job security, a fight for better wages, and a fight for good, affordable health care. It's playing out in places like Youngstown, Ohio, where Times reporter Trip Gabriel recently spoke to David Betris, a Democrat who says his party is simply out of touch with reality. Quote, "The Democratic Party has lost its voice to speak to people that shower after work and not before work. All we're saying is he won't turn over his tax returns. He's saying, I'm fighting China to get you better jobs." So are the Democrats focusing on the right fight when it comes to what's best for the American people? Joining me to weigh in, Neera Tanden, President and CEO at the Center for American Progress and a former senior advisor to President Obama. David Drucker is senior political correspondent for the Washington Examiner. Neera, are Democrats playing this right?
You know, I actually think they are. If you look at what the Democratic presidential candidates are talking about every day, they are talking about health care. They are talking about jobs. They are talking about the opioid abuse.
They're talking about it, but I think people like this guy in Youngstown are saying, what are they doing? And what a lot of Democrats in places like Ohio and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania see is a Democratic Party that's talking about the Mueller report and impeachment.
Well, I think we need to separate two things. First of all, Democrats won in November with the largest turnout in 100 years. Now, why did that happen? That happened because people were campaigning on health care and other issues, and the Democrats in the House have been delivering on those issues. But another reason why that happened is because people the Democratic Party actively campaigned on a check on Donald Trump. Lots of moderate voters, lots of even Republican-leaning voters decided to vote for Democrats in the House because they wanted some accountability for Donald Trump. So I think this is a really clear issue. Democrats have to walk and chew gum. They can't ignore their constitutional responsibilities. You have Justin Amash talking about how the president has probably violated the law and we need to take steps about it. But at the same time, Democrats on the campaign trail and the freshman Democrats are talking about health care and other issues. And in fact, the House just passed a health care bill that shores up the ACA. It has passed bills on background checks on political reform. So it is delivering. It is true the media and legitimately is focused on the Mueller report because it is a constitutional crisis, and we can't ignore that.
Well, she makes a couple of points here, David, and I wonder what your take is on it. Both that hopefully members of Congress can walk and chew gum at the same time, but also that Congress does have a constitutional responsibility for oversight. But how do you see this playing out for voters in some of those critical, say, Rust Belt states?
Right. Look, I think this is a very difficult calculation for Democrats because on the one hand, Neera's right. They do have to exercise aggressive oversight. The Democratic base demands it. And I think that they were voted into power in large part because voters wanted to see some check on the president. But I think voters are sometimes a little bit more sophisticated than we give them credit for. And I think voters understand there's a difference between aggressive oversight, which I do not think politically hurts Democrats at all, and initiating impeachment proceedings, which there is, as of yet, not the political will in the country to support. And I think that a lot of voters might see it as overreach. But let's say I'm wrong about that, and voters look at impeachment proceedings as just another form of aggressive oversight that allows them to acquire more information from the president. There's then the issue of whether you can really walk and chew gum at the same time from the perspective of what message you're able to communicate that voters are able to hear. And what we know about impeachment is that it's so rare and such an overwhelming story that I think it could become very difficult for Democrats in Congress and Democrats on the campaign trail to get through with a message about health care, about the economy, about all of the things that voters may not like about Trump that Democratic presidential candidates are going to offer. And that's where Democrats could run into trouble, because ultimately what voters are going to do in 2020 is make a calculation about who would make their lives better, who would make them feel better about the country. And if Democrats cannot communicate that, they're going to be in a world of trouble, because voters have already come to the conclusion that President Trump is who he is. That sort of diminishes expectations for him, and it requires Democrats to show that they can offer something better.
Well, the whole idea of the president, Neera, talking about these, we saw it last night, right? He was in Pennsylvania, another state where working class voters helped to get him elected. But then he brought Joe Biden into it, and I want to play that.
Don't forget, Biden deserted you. He's not from Pennsylvania. I guess he was born here, but he left you, folks. He left you for another state. Remember that, please. I meant to say that. This guy talks about, oh, I know Scranton, I know that. Well, I know the place is better. He left you for another state, and he didn't take care of you because he didn't take care of your jobs.
Just to clarify, Nara, Joe Biden's parents moved. They moved when he was 11 years old. So I don't know, in case people were wondering. But the message, I want to ask you about the message. The president's message essentially is, I'm here for you. Joe Biden isn't. And I just wonder, should Democrats be so quick to dismiss that? It did work. Those kinds of things worked for him when he ran before.
Yes.
And should Democrats be wary of believing polls that show a lot of the Democrats in these one-to-one matchups beating Donald Trump?
I personally think you have to run every campaign like you're behind. And Trump has a lot of assets. He's an incumbent. He's raising a lot of money. But I actually think the sort of pathetic level of attacks President Donald Trump has been issuing against Joe Biden and other Democrats. I mean, he's down in his name-calling game. Sleepy Joe, it's pretty pathetic. And I think the truth is that we can talk about the Mueller report and what it means for Democrats, but let's not forget what it means for the president, which is the president has been engaging in essentially administration-wide obstruction effort against this investigation. Why? Because he's worried about what it will uncover. And I think the reality of this is that Democrats have a constitutional responsibility, and Trump is fighting all of this because he is scared of what will be revealed to the American people. And that is one of the reasons why Democrats have to be able to respond. And he himself, his presidency, it's not just this will affect Democrats on the Hill. This will affect what he's talking about every day. And when Republicans launched Benghazi hearings, which were over really nothing legitimate, that did have an impact on Hillary, and I think this will have an impact on him as well.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.